Ladies and gentlemen, hold on, let me take off this dog collar so I don't sound like Fido coming down the street. Let's try that again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pathway Results Podcast. It is your boy DG. I sat on this podcast episode for a while, but I just had to wait for the right time. We're going to go ahead and get started already. I had to wait for the right time. Now we know that time doesn't exist in the way that we've been taught. Everything is the present moment. But what I'm learning is we and myself included, we don't understand this concept of divine timing. When I say divine timing, I the paradox in that is something that is divine exists outside of space and time. Something that is divine, time has no bearing on it. Time has no influence. Y'all ain't trying to hear me right now. I told you we were going to get started early. So when I think of divine timing, I think of it doesn't exist within the confines of time. It's not limited by time. Do you see what I'm saying here? So when I say trusting is you knowing that whatever it is, it's supposed to be. And whatever it's not, it just wasn't supposed to be. So I have a good friend who says it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't. Trusting that it's supposed to be how and when it's supposed to be. So why am I saying this? Because I started to study basically how a seed works, because I know that everything is holographic in this universe. So I want to know, like, if I can understand a seed, I can understand how I can create whatever I'm trying to create in my reality, because those 6 stages of a seed, whether it's going through the sprout, the seeding, the vegetative, the budding, the flowering, the ripening, these are the same stages, good God Almighty, these are the same stages that you and I go through when we have to go ahead and create a new version of ourselves. Are you seeing what I'm saying here? So I was just sitting in my yard, and it's anybody who has allergies, this time of year is, boy, I can smell the dogwoods. I don't even know if they dogwoods, but I just call them dogwoods. I can literally smell the pollen calling my name. The pollen's like, DG, where are you? Looking for me, right? But I'm sitting out in my yard waiting for my daughter to get off the bus stop. I'll get off the bus, and these little, I don't know if you ever seen them. They're like, I call them twirly birds. They're like little twirly birds. They're like these little leaves / petals that come off of a tree that, like, they look like helicopters when they're coming down. They're like, they fall to the ground. So there was a bunch of them right there. I'm like, where are these coming from? What tree makes this? So I pick it up. In the little rotary blade, it looks like a kind of like a wasp's wing or something. I pick it up and I'm looking at it, and there's a seed. There's a seed at one end, and then kind of the wing at the other end. And I was sitting here looking at it, and I say, Mother Earth, please forgive me, but my curiosity, the Sagittarius in me, wants to know more. May I open this seed up before it has germinated? And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I go ahead and first I start paying attention to the wing. And I call it a wing. I don't know what the technical term is, but I'm going to liken this wing to you and your life, okay? I'm going to liken the wind to you and your life, this seed. We all have an idea. We all have this thought, this thought energy, this thought form that we call creation. We have it inside of us, this idea. Man, if I do this, man, we all have it. And this is how I processed it. Like, this was the seedling. This was the seedling that was at one end. But then we had the wing. The wing is what's going to carry us. The wing is what's going to carry us. And I look at this wing as our belief, our knowing in our capabilities, that the understanding of our divine nature. I looked at it and said, without this wing, there is no seedling. Good God Almighty, you ain't trying to hear me. Without the belief, it can't germinate. It can't sprout. It can't. But then I said there was one more component. There was one more component that was making this possible for me and this seedling to cross paths of look how big this universe is. And I don't know the seedling's name. I don't even know if it had a name. But the fact that it and me were sitting here together, sharing space and time, how many things had to have gone right? And there was something that was unseen. There was something that was unseen that we refer to as wind. We call that wind. And I don't know how we know that wind exists, right? I mean, we know it. We can see the trees, but how we know that's wind, right? I'm sorry, I'm getting philosophical here, but this is the way my mind works. I started to ask myself, what is that in life? If this was The idea, if this was the belief, what was this thing called wind? What was wind? And this is why I started off with the divine, divinity, spirit, consciousness, life, self, breath of God, God, source, creator. There's these elements that science. See, you live most of your life through the linear logical mind. It's the scientific mind that says A plus B will give you C. But we haven't left room for the divine. We haven't left room for what the Christian folk, my mom would say, miracles. We haven't left room for that. Because when you live through the scientific, logical, linear mind, you've just extinguished all infinite possibilities of what spirit or consciousness or God or whatever you refer to it as what it can do. It existed outside of space and time. So it was not confined by the rules of science. Remember what science was? Science was nothing more than what has already been measured. Hold on, let me go ahead and say this. Science was nothing more than what has already been measured. So up until that point, it's just a theory. But if we can measure it, oh, it's real. And I started to ask myself, wait a minute, how many times have I done something in life that when you look at my past of what has been measured, it didn't look like that this was even a possibility or that thought it was going to happen? Y'all ain't trying to hear me right now. How in the world did you make it to where you did when if you look at your family, if you look at what you came from, if you look at the past of what we could measure, the measurements, it didn't look like you were supposed to be where you are right now. So what comes into account for that? There has to be something, right? So why am I saying this? Because that seed that was in stage 1, the sprout, that seed contains all the nutrients that's needed for it to grow. That seed contains everything that is needed for it to grow, for it to become, for it to germinate and sprout. It has everything that it needs already. But here's what the problem is. Here's the issue with a lot of us. We take a look at our past. We take a look at what we can see. We take a look at what our family has done. We take a look at what the society has done. We take a look at anything that we can measure, and then we measure ourselves up against that. And then the logical, linear, egoic mind forms an assumption based off of the information that is gathered. Now, this is where I'm realizing that what we call a dreamer, this is what a dreamer is. And this is for all my dreamers out there, because I'm realizing that I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer. I'm going to tell you what a dreamer is. A dreamer was like that seed, that little twirly bird seed that didn't know where it was going. It just knew that it was going to grow somewhere. It just knew that it was going to find some fertile soil, and it was going to fall down into it and let the Mother Nature, the universe, source, God, the creator, whatever you want to refer to as, it was going to allow it to do the rest of it. And it wasn't going to sit here and worry about how and when and where. No. All it was going to do was make sure it handled what it knew it needed to handle so it would do its partnership, its job. So when we start understanding that the dreamer in you already knows what it's capable of, and it didn't need measurements, it didn't need proof, it didn't need scientific measurements to say, yes, I can do this. It didn't need any of that. That was the logical linear mind. That was the left side of your brain. The right side of the brain says, yo, let's get this thing crack-a-lacking. Let's go ahead and get it going. Well, what are you going to do when you get, I don't know, but I'll figure it out when I get there. So now, the dreamer inside of you is waiting. It's waiting. And here's what the dreamer inside of you doesn't really resonate with. It doesn't resonate with being boxed in, being put in a jar. It doesn't resonate with that. Because every time that you try to put lightning in a bottle, you just diminished what it was capable of. You were lightning in a bottle. You were the lightning. You weren't the bottle. So for you, on this journey of you becoming this ripened flower, this ripened fruit, this ripened vegetable, do we not know that we first had to start off as a seed? And here's the deal. Sometimes we don't know where life is taking us. We don't know why life is happening the way it is. We don't know why. We don't know why things transpired the way they did. I'm still dealing with the ramifications and the residual effects of this sacred wound that had happened 5 going on 6 years ago. I'm still dealing with it. I know a little bit more now about myself than I did back then, so I can tell you just a little bit more as to why it's happening for the universal, cosmic, spiritual development and evolution of this vehicle vessel that we refer to as DG. But my point of this is, as you walk further down the road, meaning as you get a little deeper in the soil, meaning as these roots take hold just a little bit more down in the soil, you'll start to see why you settled where you at. You'll start to see that you could have ended up anywhere in this universe, but you settled. You settled in right where you're at. And your job is not to question whether or not you're supposed to be there. Because I told you that seed, good God Almighty, that seed could have been anywhere in this world. It could have been anywhere in this city. It could have been anywhere in this neighborhood. But the seed ended up where it did. Our job is not to question it. Our job is to see, what is it that I'm supposed to gain while I'm here? What is it that this is trying to show me? And then not compare it to where you were. I'm learning that a lot of people, it's hard for us to move forward in life and create because we're looking back on our past with resent. We're looking at our past with guilt. We're looking at our past with shame. We need not to feel shame. We need not to feel guilt. We need not to feel resentment towards our past decisions. It's easy to look back on yourself and say, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. I can't believe I made that decision. Oh, it's easy to do that from here. It's easy to do that now. Yeah, you got the awareness that you have now, but you didn't have the awareness back then when you were making those decisions. Give yourself grace, my friend. It's easy for the seed to say, I'm so stupid. Why did I decide to grow right here by the road and now I can't really spread my roots because of the concrete below? It's easy to say that on the back end of things. But on the front end, while you're in it, this is where faith had to come in. This is where trust had to come in knowing that the seed that you are, the oak tree that you are, whatever you were going to become, you were exactly where you were supposed to be when you were supposed to be there. I remember we used to grow up and we'd have to move like every couple years. And I always knew, I got older, I knew when we were moving, right? I would see my mom start to become more. She would kind of be off by herself a little bit more, and I'd catch her sometimes sitting on her chair. Good God Almighty, I'm trying to get emotional, but I would see her sitting in a chair, and she'd just kind of be with eyes closed. If you can imagine, she'd just be rocking back and forth, and there'd be a tear going down her face, and I'd know, like, oh, okay, we're going to be moving soon. We're leaving. We're going. I don't know where, but we're moving somewhere. And I would never forget. I was old enough. I was in 4th grade. You know, I have friends. I have an identity. I have my own personality. And I'm like, we have to move. We have to leave. And we had to move so far away. We had to move down to Louisiana, right? And I remember the pain because my mom had friends now. We actually had like friends. Like we'd lived there long enough. We had friends. And my mom looked at me and she had tears in her eyes, and she says, I don't know why. I don't know why we're moving here. But I know that wherever I'm going, that's where I'm supposed to be. Just take a moment right now in your life. Look at where you are right now. Look at where you are. There's infinite places you could have been, scenarios, situations. But look at where you are right now in this moment. Now I want you to look at all the things that had transpired, all of the things that had happened, all of the things that had to go, quote unquote, right, all of the things that had to go, quote unquote, wrong, just for you to have this breath in your lungs, just for you to have the senses to be able to hear my voice right now, for you to be able to still find a place for you to plant this seed, for you to still have the ability to say, you know what, today, I'm going to win today. Today is going to match my energy. I'm going to choose my perspective. How many things in your life would have had to have happened for you to end up where you are right now? And a lot of those things, you had no idea. A lot of those things were unconscious. We can probably sit back right there. How often we forget to look at where we are. Do you not know that all of it was needed? All of it was needed. Hear me when I say this. The abuse was needed. The trauma was needed. The hardship was needed. All of it was needed. Every single facet. Because if we took one way, if we took one thing away, one thing, one iota, one emotion, one thought, it would take you down a completely different path, and this world would not get to experience you as you are today. Now, what I'm saying right now, and what I'm trying to get through and speak to your higher self, this is the next level of using your mind, though. This is what we call perspective. This is just a perspective that I've had because I've been able to connect the dots and see how all the dots were actually connected. You know, when you go to Red Lobster, I don't know if Red Lobster is still even open. I ain't been in a couple years. But when you go to Red Lobster, you get the kid menu. And on it, they had to connect the dots. You know, 1 led to 2, and 2 led to 3, and 3 led to 4. And when 3 led to 4, 4 was way up on top, and it didn't look like it really was supposed to go there. But you trusted because you knew 3 came after 4. So you went ahead and took that little crayon and drew from 3 to 4 and then 4 to 5. And by the time you got to 38, the crayon wasn't working anymore. So you had to switch over to the green one because the red one, even though it was a lobster, you think the green one worked better because it was more fresh. You started to realize about halfway, 3/4 of the way, that these dots were connecting. It was drawing a picture. This is what happens in life, but you got to be able to look back and connect the dots. Life ain't going to do it for you. And you start thinking of life as like a connected dots. Life ain't nothing more than a Red Lobster kiddie menu. That's all it is. Life ain't nothing more than a Red Lobster kiddie menu. But it's your responsibility to go and see how these dots were connecting. And here's the thing. You may have started at 1, but the next dot may not be 2. The next dot may be 3. It may be 40. It may be 50. But please believe that all the dots at some point you will see, they connected. So this is why I tell you to trust. I'm only speaking from experience because that's all I can do anyway. I have no choice but to trust. I'm in a stage in my life right now where I thought I had made it out of something, and I feel like I'm still in. I feel like I'm deeper. But maybe all that this time is where I feel like I'm deeper. Maybe, just maybe, the first time when I got in the water and I felt like I couldn't breathe and I couldn't swim and I didn't know what to do, and somehow I made it out, it gave me enough courage, it gave me enough power for this time when I got in the water. Now, I know I can swim. I can tread water just a little bit longer. You can take me out to deep ocean, but I'm going to figure it out this time because I made it through the last time. So now I can see that the last time was really just preparing me for this time. Do you see how this works? So now nothing from the last time was wasting for this time. And how come this time feels like it's harder? That's because you're stronger. That's because you're more developed. You got more veins popping out. You got muscles bulging. Your stuff is poking out of your shirt now. You didn't look like you did back 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. You're a little bit more developed. So if you're more developed, we got to have heavier weight. But now I'm seeing, good God Almighty, I'm seeing not one thing of it wasted. It could not have been. Tell me how. Somebody please tell me. It could not have been wasted. None of it was. And if this holds true for me, it would have to hold true for you. Because you and I were this one thing that had split itself off infinitely to experience every perspective. So I know what my job is now. I know what my job is. My job is to realize that it wasn't wasted 5 years ago. Take those lessons, extract them, and apply it right now. Apply it right now. Apply it right now. Apply it right now. But it would take this thing that we call self-contemplation. It would take this thing that we call accountability. See, for the longest when I couldn't swim, I was blaming the ocean. See, for the longest when I couldn't swim, I was blaming my swimming trunks. I was blaming the clothes. They were weighing me down. It's too heavy. The waves are too hard. I'm blaming everything on the outside of which I did not have control over. But then this little thing that my mama had ingrained in me way back when, because she showed me love through this word, this A word of what we called accountability. I'm realizing that the answer actually came before the question, because if it had not been for my mother and my father ingraining accountability in me to the point where I had to look myself in the mirror and say, no, D, you're not doing this. No, D, you're the one who made this. If they had not done that when I was a little boy, and I felt like they were so hard on me, but they weren't hard on me. There was their higher self just doing what it knew it needed to do, because at some point, this boy was going to become a man. This boy was going to become a man, and this man was going to have to figure it out. He was going to have to figure it out. But the man was going to have the tools. He was going to have the tools. And if he didn't have the tools, how was he going to figure it out? So why am I saying this right now? I'm telling you, can't nobody swim for you. I've told you this before. Ain't nobody going to swim for you. Ain't nobody going to swim for you. And here's the cool part. You've already been equipped with all the capability to be able to swim. You've already been equipped with everything that you needed to swim. You've already been equipped with the oak tree inside of the seed that you are. You already got it all inside of you. But it's going to take a little bit of accountability. And that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. That's what's going to be painful. You know why that's going to be painful? Because that was part of the cosmic game. Part of the cosmic game was for us to come into this experience and forget what we were. Oh my gosh. We came into this experience to forget what we were. Because through forgetting, in between forgetting and remembering, it was all of this just plush, fertile soil that we could bed this seed in that we called learning. And that's all we were here to do anyway, was to learn. And then once you learn, you would grow. The seed would start to sprout. And then here's what the sprouting of the seed would do. The sprout would get to this budding, right? This is when that which it's going to be starts to show itself. And when it starts to show itself, it looks back on itself and it says, wait a minute, I'm not this seed. I'm actually something more than that. And now we start to see this energy that had been put into it start to work for itself. You know how it is when you thought you could do something and you gave it a try and you did it and it happened. And then you said to yourself, I think I can do this again. This is exactly what I just explained is going on in my life right now. And it feels like it's dark. When it comes back around the second time, it's going to feel like it's darker. It's going to feel like it's heavier. That's because it is. Remember, it just wants to learn. I never forget when I was driving my car, I was at a roundabout, and I was like, man, I really want to do something. I really want to accomplish this. I really want to do this. And the universe says, higher self, source, God, however you refer to it, it says, okay, you can do it. But I also want to know myself just a little bit better. And I intuitively knew that when it said that, it wanted to know itself, through me. So it wanted to know itself through me. It was doing it through me. Me and it were not separate. Although it seems like it is, it's not. It wanted to see what it was like and learn more about itself through me. So I knew what that meant. There was going to be a challenge. There was going to be a hardship. There was going to be something that was going to force me to reflect and look back on myself and look inward. So I could find just a little bit more of myself, so it could find just a little bit more of itself. And then I start realizing that this is the pattern. This is the pattern. Is this not what this seedling is going to do, this little whirly bird that I told you about? Is this not what it's going to do? It's going to sprout and become a tree at some point. And then it's going to produce this trunk and these branches. And then it will produce a tree that produces more fruits and more whirly birds and more seedlings, and it will continue to do this, and those seeds will go off and go wherever. Is this not the same framework of what this universe is doing? Is it not the same thing that your family's doing? where you are the seedling. You are the trunk that becomes the branch. This is why we call them family trees. Do we see how this works? So why am I doing this? What's the point? Let's wrap it up, D. I get it. Okay, I get it. I want you to understand something about yourself, maybe that you weren't aware of. You have everything already encoded inside of you, all your capability, all your potential. But before that seed could grow, meaning before you could become all that you truly were, there was going to have to be a death. There was going to have to be a quickening. There was going to have to be a removal, a release of the shell around it. When I opened up that seedling, I saw that the inside was completely different from the outside. The outside was this hard exterior. The outside was this hard, it didn't look anything like the inside. The inside was green. It was lush. It was like there's life here. It's not this dead outside exterior. Do we not know that this is the same thing that happens in our life? So trust. Trust. Trust that everything in your life is just leading you to the point so that you may be able to find fertile ground so you may start to sprout. But along that journey, you're going to need accountability so you can shift your perspective consciously. That's the one thing people ask me, well, what's one thing I can do to help my mindset or improve my life? Gain control of your perspective. That's it. If you can shift your perspective, you can move from the 3D to 4D to 5D and quicker than you've ever experienced. So I start to look at my life and people say, man, you had a quick awakening. Man, you're really... That's because I realized that the key to this whole thing was my perspective. And all I had to do was shift it. And there was no boundaries as to how I could shift my perspective. I shifted my perspective. I shifted my level of consciousness. I shifted my earning ability. I shifted my capability. I shifted my ability to love to not only others, but more importantly, myself. It was all done through perspective. I didn't have to look at myself as this little boy who can't do certain things because the color of his skin or because he didn't come from this lineage. I could shift my perspective and create it however I needed to. And I know if I shifted my perspective long enough, it would become a belief. And when it became a belief, it became my truth. And when it became my truth, that would be what I acted upon. And what I acted upon would create my reality. So not on some woo-woo, hee-hee, ha-ha type stuff do we create our reality. It's really quite simple. But in order for you to regain your control of your reality, you'd have to regain control of your perspective. In order to do that, you'd have to have that A word of accountability. And if you look at the school system nowadays, only because I have kids, they don't teach accountability at the level that would be needed in order for this child to be able to create its life consciously. So this is why it's an inside job. If you have kids, if you're around kids, teach them accountability. Teach them accountability. This is how you'll teach the seed to become this oak tree. I'm coaching my son's 5th grade team, and my son says, man, sometimes you're hard on us. I say, son, I'm going to tell you the same thing my mother used to tell me. I used to say, Mom, why are you being so hard on me? I can't do anything. She said, son, if you're fortunate enough and you live long enough, you'll see why. And you'll thank me. I'm fortunate enough that my mom and my dad are still alive, and I can thank them because I see now really what they were doing. They were giving me the muscle. They were giving me the fertilizer of accountability because they knew at some point, maybe on a spiritual plane, on a spiritual level, they knew that at some point, this soul, this child was going to have to go out to the ocean. And it seemed like it was hard when I would dunk you down under the water so you could get used to holding your breath. But I was just trying to teach you how to develop this muscle. Because as a parent, as your mother, as your father, I won't be able to flex it for you. You'll have to flex it. So I was explaining to my son, at some point, you will see why I'm holding each one of you accountable to a level that's probably 2 or 3 years older than what you are now. Because at some point, when life gets hard, and you wonder how you're going to pay them bills, and you're wondering, should you stay home or should you leave your family? And you're going to be wondering whether or not you even want to live this life anymore. The answer would have came before the question. And this muscle of accountability will be developed enough just for you to put the next foot in front of the other and say, I'm going to figure this out. You all keep going. Please know that you matter. Please know that your journey is so sacred, it's so special. There's not a point of it that wasn't for you. It is yours. Own it. Love it. I know sometimes it doesn't always feel good, but that too is a part of the experience. And as always, I wish you nothing but the best on the pathway to your results. Thank you all. I thank you all for your really just hanging out with me. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. You all are amazing. It's cool. I have like it's like yeah, theme song, Rob. Yeah. It's like I have like a little I enjoy. Oh, thank you, Jermaine. I thank you all for your time. I enjoy like doing these podcasts with you all. I would do this full time for a living every day, all day if I could. But haven't got it to that point yet. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay if you smell onions. It's okay to cry.